Welcome back to the shop, everyone. I'm a member of a few groups on Facebook that deal with different forms of woodworking, mainly in pen making. And the question comes up at least once a month about how to price your product. And there's a lot of different ways to come about it. There's the 3 times materials method, there's breakdown sheets. What I'd like to do tonight is go over how to price your product. In my real life job, I'm an estimator, so I deal with customers every day that come to me with their prints, and I tell them what it's going to cost for us to produce their parts and how much a tool would cost to make their parts. So it's something I'm familiar with, deal with every day, and I'd like to share some of that experience with you. So at this point, we're going to switch over to a computer and take a look at a spreadsheet together. All right, everybody, so let's pull up the Excel spreadsheet that I worked on earlier today. What you've got here is a basic breakdown costing spreadsheet. Now, this doesn't go into near the detail of what I use at work, but for what we're needing for breaking down the cost of a pen, I think this will do just fine. So you've got 3 basic areas of costs in this. You've got your building costs, your equipment replacement costs, and expendables. So over here for building cost, this is anything related to the building that you work in. Now this is either going to be an attached building such as mine, which is part of a garage, or a detached building. And that's going to determine a ratio over here that is applied to the remainder of the costs. So in this example, it's an attached garage with a total square footage of 2,200 and the shop size is 120 square feet. That means that I'm using 5% of the total space of the house. So then it applies that 5% ratio to all of these other costs. And these are not actual numbers, so these are just examples, but this would say be my annual cost of either rent or mortgage, my annual electrical bill, my annual gas bill, and annual internet cost, since all of those are used in the shop. And those are all fixed costs. Those are all going to be there regardless of whether or not I'm out in the shop. So if you have any other additional fixed costs that are associated with the house, you could include water and sewage, any other kind of utilities that you have brought into the house. You would want to include it in this list. And you can see as you add one, let's say water and sewage, and mine is going to be, let's just say 500 a year. I'm not sure if that's right or not, but you see the modified cost then is $27.27 just for the shop. And then that all gets summed down here at the bottom. So your annual cost for the shop is approximately $835. Now in this next one, equipment replacement costs. This is a column that takes into account the cost of every piece of equipment associated in the production of the particular pen that you are pricing. So what I would do is list all of the equipment that you have in the shop and its full replacement cost. Let's say your shop burns down and you need to replace everything in that shop, or something wears out over the course of X number of years and you're going to have to replace that. You want that replacement cost covered in the cost of the pens that you're going to make over the course of a year. Or you could average these costs out over, say, 2 years, 3 years, whatever you think is going to work for your case. There's a lot of debate about markets and market prices, that a pen in one market will sell for X number of dollars and then sell for Y dollars in another one. And personally, I think that is a very valid argument. Other pen makers out there will say they'll price their pen what they're going to price it, and people will either buy it or not. Well, if you price yourself out of your market, you're not going to sell a lot of pens, and you're not going to be making very many if you're counting on revenue to be coming in to be able to make more pens. You really need to take into account your market and how you want to adjust for it in this column. Last one is expendables. These are all the items that you think you're going to need to replace over the course of 12 months. I always include a lathe belt in there. I've never actually had to replace one yet, but I'm also not that hard on my lathe. Over here I've got an air purifier, and then in here I've got the air filter as an expendable. Anything that's going to get used, thrown away, or used up over the course of the year, include what you think you're going to spend in that year in this column, and then that will get summed down here. Next, you need to figure out how many hours you have available in a year to devote to your hobby or your business. For me, it's a hobby, so I don't have 8 hours a day, 5 days a week to spend to it. This 500 number is rounded down actually for me. I figured 2 hours per day on the weekday and 10 hours on the weekend. So that actually came out to 530 hours. So I rounded it down a little bit. These numbers here are automatically calculated based upon these numbers in the table. So it takes those numbers and divides them by the total number of hours so that you get a cost per hour for your building, your equipment, and your expendables. And this provides you with a total burden rate. A burden rate is the overhead of having a shop. These are all your costs associated with a shop and are not, well, I'm not going to say that. So these are the costs associated with having your shop. This section down here is where you get to play around a little bit. Labor rate is what you think you're worth in an hourly rate. Some people will say they have a day rate. Say like they expect to be paid $500 a day for what they're doing. And then they have to figure out in a day, how many of these things can I make? And then figure their hourly rate that way. That's something that David Picciuto over at Make Something does. He uses a day rate to figure out his daily costs, or his daily wage rate, I would say. Next, you calculate or estimate, the number of hours that it's going to take to produce this particular pen. This is based upon your experience. Somebody new at this is going to take longer to produce a pen. At the same time, since they're less experienced, their time is not as valuable as somebody who has been doing this for 10 years. Your beginning pens are going to be worth less than the pens you make a year from now. This next one down is your materials cost. Now this is your kit cost and your blank cost. That's all that should go in there, unless there's something else involved in making the pen that's going to be on the pen itself. But typically that's just going to be your kit and your blank. If you had to pay to get those items to you to be able to be made, you want to include those shipping costs in the cost of this pen. Now, if you have ordered multiple things at the same time, you don't want to charge the full shipping rate for just this pen. You want to average it out over everything that you had shipped in, because you may have purchased 4 extra pen kits and are going to make those down the road, and those may sell later, but it will be better for you overall to spread out that cost over the pens instead of trying to make it all up on one. Next are your profit rates. Now, if you're treating this as a business, you can do profits one of two ways. You can include your labor rate as part of your profit and invest that directly back into the business. That's called a retained earning. If you only want to build the business off of your profit, that means you're going to take this, your $40 times 0.75, so you're going to give yourself $30 for this pen to put in your pocket, and then you're going to have $10 left over. You're going to charge an extra 30% above that to be able to have some money to invest back into the business. And that's the same for the burden and the materials cost. Let's say you're going to take out some money every month from your business to pay towards the household bills to help offset the cost of electricity and heating the shop, and the extra tax rate for having or an extra tax rate for having a detached building. Materials profit, that's, your money's going to come back in to cover the cost of the kit and the blank, plus a little bit more, so that you can afford to buy more and more kits and blanks down the road. Now, shipping profit, that's something that you can choose to do or not to do. It's not something you have to charge a profit on. Typically, I would add a little bit above shipping to cover any extra handling. If you had to go out of your way to get things shipped to you, if you were, say, having it shipped to a P.O. box and had to go to the post office to get it and bring it back, I'd charge a little extra for that, but nothing major, a 10% max on that. And from this, and I noticed one error that I'm going to have to fix here, because this is figuring total labor price based on $40. I didn't take into account the production time on that. So I'll have to fix this. And that probably applies to all of these. So I'll go through and fix this column before I put this on the Google Drive and make it available to you. But once that's fixed, this will come up and give you a total price for your pen based upon everything that you've put into these previous fields. As a matter of fact, let me look at this real quick. So I've got, and the formula for this is a markup formula. So you're taking your rate of $40 and dividing it by 1 minus your profit. So this actually gives you a little bit more in the calculation. Instead of taking your labor rate and multiplying it by 30% and then adding it to your price, it's just a different way of calculating your profit. It's either profit or gross margin, and this way is called gross margin. So for this, we're going to say, I'm going to unprotect. I have protected this sheet, but I haven't password protected it. That's mainly just to protect the calculations that I have in there in case you want to go through and wipe everything out. If you want to make some changes to formatting, you can come in here and unprotect it, but I would go back and reprotect it once you're done formatting. So for right now, I'm going to change, oh crap, I just protected it, didn't I? Unprotect sheet. So L10 refers to labor rate, L10. So I'm going to take that and multiply it by the number of hours that are involved in making this pen. Then divide it by 1 minus the profit. So that brings your labor price down from over 50 to just over 42. So you can see how much of a difference that made. And it's going to go the same for the burden, and material price is going to stay the same. Material price is what it is, but the burden is going to be affected by the number of hours you're actually using the equipment. So let's go in and change that. Hours. Oops, that is not what I wanted. Let's try that again. So that brings your burden down to $8. As you can see from this example, my estimating price shows it as just under $100. Whereas if I took the materials times 3 price, you're a little bit over $100. This to me, it's roughly what, a difference of about 6%. That's an acceptable margin of error. Showing that the materials times 3 price is a valid pricing structure. If you're in a more competitive market, I would use this kind of breakdown. so that you can have more control over what your costs and profits are. This 30% is just an example. Let's say you wanted to make 50%. All of a sudden that price jumps up to $137 compared to the $105. So there's a little bit of difference in the error there between the two. So it really depends on how much profit you're wanting to charge, or profit you're wanting to make. And this form lets you play around with that and shows you the difference between what your materials times 3 and what your estimated price is. So I encourage you guys to download this. I will have a link on it in the description below. Here, let me switch back to the camera now. So as you can see, there's a lot of different options you can use in pricing your parts. And it's really just going to depend upon how much you want to delve into it and figure out what your actual costs are, or if you just want to do the fast, simple way and do materials times 3, which we know is safe. You're covering the cost of your materials, you're giving yourself some pay, and you're giving yourself a little bit of profit to invest back into your hobby. So it really just depends upon how granular, sorry, I got cotton in my mouth, you want to be with your pricing. And I know this can get a little dicey and confusing at times, so feel free to email me at this email address, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have about estimating or pricing. I'm always available for questions. If you want to ask something that you think everybody wants to hear about, put that in the comments below, and I'll be sure to answer it and let everybody see the same answer. All right, so that's it for tonight. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this was informative and not too boring. I know staring at a spreadsheet for about 15 minutes is really not a lot of fun, but I think it's something that everybody would like to hear about, at least on this subject. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for watching. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can get updates on whenever I release a new video. And if you like what I've done here tonight, make sure to hit that like button. You all have a good evening, and I'll talk to you later.